All right. Are we ready for the jury? Bring the jury out. All right, good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to be seated. It's my understanding that there was a request made to maybe do some calisthenics or jumping jacks in between. What we can do is, I understand sitting for long periods of time becomes a problem, especially if you have any physical issues. And so what I would like to do is, if in between witnesses, if there's a lull in action, then if you would like to stand where you are, feel free to stand for a minute. And as long as you remain seated while we're doing the actual testimony, then there's no problem with you standing up and stretching your legs. All right, we are ready for the next.
State goes Brandt Holt.
Sergeant Holt, you'll raise your right hand and be placed under oath.
Do you swear from the testimony you give in this case be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, ma'am. Good morning. Would you state your full name for the record, please?
Yes, Brandt Holt,
Thank you. And spell your first and last name.
B-R-A-N-D-T, last name H-O-L-T.
Thank you. And where are you employed?
I am currently employed with the Cheatham County Sheriff's Office.
And what's your position there?
I am a patrol sergeant on day shift.
Thank you. And Sergeant Holt, before taking a position with the Cheatham County Sheriff's Office, where were you employed?
I was employed as a criminal investigator for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation.
Thank you. And before you were with the TBI, you were also in law enforcement, is that correct?
I was, sir.
And what'd you do?
It's the Springfield Police Department, Roberts County Sheriff's Office, and United States Army Military Police.
Thank you very much. On April the 7th of 2018, were you assigned to investigate or assist with the investigation into the defendant, Joseph Daniels?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall the morning of April 7th?
I do, sir.
Okay. And what happened on the morning of April 7th?
We picked up the defendant, Mr. Joe Daniels, and transported him south into Hickman County.
Okay. And who asked you to go to the Dixon County Jail to pick up the defendant?
I believe it was a request through supervisor with the TBI.
Okay. And the defendant requested you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So at his request, you responded to the Dixon County Jail.
Yes, sir.
And do you know if the defendant was reminded of his Miranda warnings?
He was by Agent Boyd, sir.
Okay. And you observed this?
Yes, sir.
And in your observation, was the defendant familiar with his Miranda rights?
Yes, sir.
And why do you say that?
He quoted, he made a quote that he had the right to remain silent and anything could be used against him.
Okay. And again, you were there at his request?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what did the defendant tell you and Agent Boyd that he wanted to do on the morning of April 7th?
That he wanted to show the location of where the child would be, and he wanted to provide closure.
He wanted to provide closure.
Yes, sir.
And so what did you do next?
Myself and Agent Boyd, we transported him out to the Garner's Creek area, to 3rd Street, where we got some food and some water.
Okay. Was there was still an active investigation going on?
Yes, sir.
Was the command post still set up?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, the Red Cross was still there providing food and water to all the searchers?
Yes, sir.
And did you get food and water for the defendant from the Red Cross aid station?
Yes, sir.
All right. After you got food for the defendant from Red Cross, where did you go next?
We went past to, I believe it's Harris
Okay.
Road. We turned left onto Harris Road and then went up to Highway 48, where we turned south, traveling towards Heaton County.
Okay. And did the defendant give you these directions and locations?
Yes, sir.
And what did he tell you had happened?
That he had taken Baby Joe into Heaton County and had dropped the child off of the bridge, and he took him into Heaton County because he loved water.
Okay. Did he say how he had transported Joe Clyde Daniels?
Yes, sir. He transported him in the trunk of his vehicle.
Okay. And did he tell you if he made any stops en route to dump his body off of a bridge?
Yes, sir. He stated that he stopped at the Love's truck stop to get a Dr. Pepper using 3 $1 bills.
Okay. I mean, he specifically said $1 bills
That is correct, sir.
and a Dr. Pepper?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you actually drive over the Interstate 40 into Hickman County?
Yes, sir.
So Love's truck stop is just north of I-40
Yes, sir.
on Highway 48?
Yes, sir.
And you cross over the interstate
Yes, sir.
and going south on Highway 48?
Yes, sir.
And did you go to a bridge?
We did, sir. We went to, I believe, 4 bridges, sir.
Okay. And what happened as you got to these bridges?
As we drove across each bridge, we slowed down and would ask the defendant if this was the location. And the first 2, he proceeded to tell us no. He had described the bridge to have a sign called the Piney, and we wound up stopping at the 3rd bridge because that's the location of the Piney River. There's a sign that says Piney.
Okay. What happened there?
And if I recall correctly, asked him if this was potentially a location, and in accordance with my investigative report, IR number 16, recalling that he stated that 8 out of 10, and that was placed in quotations, that he was sure that this is the location where he took the child out of the trunk and dropped him over the bridge.
Did he say why he would want to drop him off the bridge? And if you need to refer to your report, you can.
Stating why, sir, no, sir, but he didn't make a comment that he mentioned that it was a long way down to the body, to
Okay.
hit the water.
All right. And did the defendant describe in this process of driving to the bridge how he was driving?
He was driving slow, and if I refer back to the IR,
Yes, sir.
said it was dark, and he was driving slow, trying to ensure that no one else was going to be around when he decided to dump his son's body.
Okay. Did you find any evidence at any of these bridges that Joe Clyde's body had been dumped or discarded?
No, sir.
Okay. And did you take the defendant back towards the command posts in the McElhaney Road area?
Yes, sir.
And when you got back over towards McElhaney Road, who was present?
McElhaney Road's present was be the defendant's father.
The defendant's father?
Yes, sir.
And is his name also Joe Daniels?
Yes, sir.
Would he be Joe Daniels Jr., the father?
Big Joe, sir.
And to be clear, I'm going to distinguish between the defendant and Big Joe.
Yes, sir.
Big Joe being the defendant's father.
Yes, sir.
But was Big Joe present?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what happened in the presence of Big Joe?
Big Joe was placed into the vehicle with me and the defendant, with the opportunity for the defendant to tell his father what had happened.
Okay. And what did the defendant say with Big Joe in the vehicle with you and the defendant?
He stated that he had beaten the child.
The defendant said that
Yes, sir.
in the presence of his father.
Yes, sir.
Did you force him to say that?
No, sir.
He just was telling his father what had happened?
Yes, sir.
And okay. What happened after that?
Big Joe, the father, made a mention of Crystal which then in turn created a pause, and the defendant stopped making statements about beating the child, and then questions started revolving around Crystal's involvement.
Okay, thank you. Now, after that interaction with the defendant and his father, did you return the defendant back to the Dixon County Jail?
Yes, sir.
And did he make additional statements to you and Agent Boyd as you were traveling back to the jail?
Yes, sir, that he had lied, and that he couldn't remember where the child was located.
Okay. Did he make any more statements as to whether he did in fact kill his son or not? And I'll refer you to the very last paragraph of your IR.
Well, yes, sir. Multiple times during the conversation with him, there were the consistencies were that he had beaten the child, that he had placed the child into the trunk of the vehicle, and he did comment that Alex, his other son, had seen this occur and would have to relive this the rest of his life.
So you heard the defendant say that Alex had seen it
Yes, sir.
and was going to have to relive it the rest of his life?
Yes, sir.
I'll pass the witness.
Deputy Holt?
Sir.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you're describing events that took place on April the 7th of 2018, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you picked up Mr. Daniels, you and Agent Boyd,
Yes, sir.
and you were responding to a telephone call that he had made from the jail asking for TBI agents to come down there. Is that correct?
I don't know how the actual communication transpired between the defendant, sir, and the Bureau, but I was instructed to go pick him up, sir.
Okay. And he, in that telephone call, indicated that someone, a suspect, he had been made, I'm sorry, I'll rephrase that. He stated that he understood a suspect had purchased a Dr. Pepper at Love's, and that he was that person, and he wanted y'all to come so he could take you to the child's body, correct?
I'm not familiar with those comments, sir. I'm familiar with when I actually made contact with him that he said that he would like to show us where the son would be located.
And you obtained video from Love's.
I did not, sir.
Okay. Have you viewed any of the videos from Love's?
I have seen, I believe, one or two videos, sir. If I can recall correctly, I have seen those, sir.
All right. And none of those videos depicted Mr. Daniels buying a Dr. Pepper at Love's, did they?
Not that I can recall, sir.
One of those videos depicted Mr. McCormick buying a 12-pack of Dr. Peppers at Love's, right?
I'm not familiar with Mr. McCormick, sir. I'm sorry.
If Joseph Daniels had been made to believe that he killed Joe Clyde and hauled his body off in a car, he should be able to take you to that body, shouldn't he?
Agent Holt wasn't a portion or part of any of those interrogations. How would he know?
Seems to be that you're asking him a question that's not within his, I mean, I think you can ask him if he had any involvement in that part of the investigation and then rephrase your question, but you got to lay a foundation, otherwise he would be speculating. Sustain the objection.
Mr. Daniels told you that Joe Clyde could be found under a bridge crossing the Piney River, correct?
He had commented that he believed the bridge where he had dropped the body had a sign that said Piney on it. And then we slowed down at each bridge, sir, and he paid particularly attention to that bridge where the Piney River sign was located.
And you slowed down and you looked at each of these bridges
We did, sir.
and you searched around them?
We stopped particularly at the one that he said 8 out of 10, and then that's when he stated, well, I took the body out of the trunk and threw the body over the bridge from the passenger side.
Okay. And how many of those bridges did you stop at?
We actually slowed down for all 4 bridges, sir, but mainly the one he said stop here. That's the one we stopped at, sir.
So he took you to 4 bridges. You looked at all 4 of those bridges for Joe Clyde Daniels.
I did not personally look for that one. I do know that they were searched, sir. If I recall correctly, in reading the IR's TWRA, Officer Andrew Deaton, I think was one when we stayed with the defendant, sir, and we were traveling back. I believe Mr. Deaton with TWRA and his crew actually went down to that one particular location.
And throughout this search, down into Hickman County, you never recovered any evidence, any physical evidence whatsoever?
No, sir.
Had he, I'll withdraw that, Judge. I'll pass the witness.
Redirect.
No further questions.
Thank you, Officer Holt. Sergeant Holt, you may step down and release from your subpoena.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, next witness. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a smartwatch that my children got me, and it sends me these messages about it's time to stand up occasionally. I don't know, kind of and unfortunately, I have to ignore it more often than not when it goes off while I'm on the bench. But I understand your feeling. It's terrible when your watches are smarter than you are, isn't it? Step right up, sir. We'll come right around here. We're going to ask you to face our clerk and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony you give in this case be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I'm going to ask you to speak loudly into that microphone so everyone can hear it, all right?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, sir. Would you state your name for the jury, please?
Gregg Fort,
And how do you spell it?
Greggfort.
All right. And where are you employed?
I'm employed at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab in Nashville.
Okay. And what do you do at the crime lab?
I am currently in the firearms and tool mark identification unit.
On April the 7th of 2018, were you still employed at the TBI crime lab?
I was, yes.
And were you employed in a different capacity there at that time?
At that time, I worked in the forensic biology unit, and I did then, and I still do, work for the VCRT.
What is the VCRT?
Is the Violent Crime Response Team.
And what does the VCRT do?
So the VCRT will get called by one of our agents or another agency to come out and assist or process a scene.
Okay. And so was the VCRT called out on April the 7th of 2018?
We were actually called on the 6th, the night before, to arrive the next morning. So
And what was your role on the team at that point?
I was the team leader of the team that got called out to the scene.
Okay. And let's talk about the makeup of the team a little bit. Who all makes up the team, or what specialties?
So the team is made up of other scientists in the lab itself, and there's a documenter that will actually document the scene. There's a forensic biologist, a micro person that does microanalysis such as shoe prints and tire tracks and things of that nature. There's a firearms expert and a latent prints person that will also come out with us.
All right, and then there's a team leader, and what's the team leader's responsibilities?
As a team lead, I'm there to help coordinate the team itself, be a liaison between the agent and the team, move the team around. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, we also have a scan station person that comes out and will actually scan the scene. So the coordination between the scan station people and the team itself, just to assist and help the team where it's needed and just make sure everybody's kind of got everything they need and don't need anything else and have the help that they need.
So when the VCRT arrives on a scene, tell us kind of what the general process is. What happens?
So the first thing that happens when we arrive at the scene is we get with one of the agents to get a briefing of kind of what's going on and what they know about the scene itself to kind of give us a little bit of direction of what we're doing there and what we should be processing for.
All right, and did that happen in this case?
It did, yes.
And who was your point of contact?
The point of contact was Special Agent Holt.
All right, so what kinds of things did your briefing consist of? What did you know about the scene?
So usually a briefing just kind of gives us a quick narrative of what's going on, and what we got was that there was a missing child that had previously went missing. I believe it was the 4th was when they actually got information that this child was missing, and then we kind of got a brief description of what was going on up to that point. We were also told that it was a possibility that something may have happened in the house, that the night before that the child had peed and some things had happened, so we kind of were there to assist and look for indication that something may or may not have happened.
Okay, and when you say you were there to look for indication of what may or may not have happened, what were you looking for?
So we were specifically there to look for staining, blood staining more specific, but what we kind of do to start with is look for reddish brown stains and then do our testing accordingly from there.
All right. So once your team gets the briefing, then typically what happens?
Once the team gets a briefing, there will be a couple people that walk through the scene and get a general idea of how the scene is set up as far as the house layout, just kind of different things that we might see at the time. If you notice something going in that looks odd or off, we'll mark it. Sometimes there's scenes with shoe prints and dust, and we don't want to disturb those, so a lot of times we'll mark things that we don't want disturbed by somebody coming in and taking pictures ahead of time. So sometimes when we come in and take pictures, there'll be markers, but it's all based on what that initial walkthrough has been.
And did you conduct that walkthrough along with another member of the team?
I did, yes.
All right. And then after the walkthrough is completed and you observe the scene, what do you do?
So once the walkthrough is completed, we'll come back out and brief the rest of the team of what we've either found or where to go from there as far as processing the scene itself.
All right. And I'm going to show you a picture here. Do you recognize that, Agent Ford?
It appears to be a diagram of the scene.
Okay. And you said you did a walkthrough of the house. Is this the house, or at least the layout of the house as you recall it?
Yes.
All right. So let me walk over here. What door did the team make entry through?
So we actually came in.
See that door?
Yes.
And this is the back porch area up here?
Yes.
And what are all those numbers that are laying around? What do they mean that are on the paper? What do they mean?
The numbers are marking evidence, so these are actually markers that are placed down either for something that we find that we want to collect and take back to the lab and submit to the lab to be tested further, or something that's a stain that we want to test there at the scene.
All right. And so as you walk in from the back door, there's a couch and a coffee table directly in front of you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then the master bedroom would be off to your left as you're walking in that back door.
Yes.
All right, and then the rest of the bedrooms are on the other end of the house.
That's correct.
All right. And as part of your of the VCRT, do y'all take photographs?
We do, yes.
Your responsibilities, and I believe in this case you took some 1,200 photographs. Is that accurate?
That's That's very possible, yes.
And we're not going to go through 1,200 photographs, but I do want to show you some. And Your Honor, that's to make that diagram the next exhibit.
Right. Then, diagram would be 178.
Agent Fort, do you recognize those photographs that I've just handed you?
These all appear to be pictures that were taken there at the scene by the VCRT.
All right. If we could go to the next photo there. So Agent Fort, on the left side, is that the front of the house that we are seeing?
On the left, yes.
All right. Do you have any recall of what this area right here is?
No, I believe it's part of landscaping or just the general area of the front of the house.
And is this the back porch that the thing went up and went in the back door?
Yes.
Let's make that the next exhibit, Your Honor.
Are you going to mark each one of these individually?
Yes, Your Honor.
This would be 179.
And Agent Fort, where was this blanket? Was it located on the back of the house?
Yes, it was located, when I actually said 23 was next to the door on the diagram, that's actually marker number 23. This was a comforter that was sitting in a chair right next to the back door on the back porch area.
So there was a comforter that was on the chair.
It was a comforter and a pillow, both. So
All right. And what was the marker there representing?
that was just to mark those items to be collected.
All right. And then the picture on the right, is that the door that the team made entry through?
Yes.
And what is there on the left as you're walking in the door?
It was like a wagon with some toys and stuff on it.
All right. Does that toy box and wagon and does that block part of the entryway as you're walking into the door?
Partially, yes.
All right. Has to make that the next exhibit, Your Honor.
No, I'm sorry, that's 170, 180, correct?
Yes, sir.
So now, Agent Fort, is this the living room as you're making entry through the back door?
Yes,
All right. And is that the couch and coffee table that we see there?
it is, yes.
And just the general state of the living room and the house, did it appear to be picked up and vacuumed and that sort of thing?
Yes, it seemed to be straightened and clean.
Okay. So it appeared to be straightened and cleaned?
Yes.
All right. Next, make that the next exhibit, please, Your Honor. And then what is this photograph depicting, Agent Ford?
A stain that was on the wall
All right. That's,
by the doorway. So.
did that stain turn out to be anything significant?
It did not, no.
All right. The next exhibit, please, Your Honor. All right. And is this the mantle that was above the fireplace in the living room?
It is, yes.
So if you're sitting on the couch that we saw previously, would you be looking at this mantle?
Yeah, it would be across the room
Be
from
across
you
the
at
room.
that point. yes.
So this is to your right as you're coming in the back door.
Correct.
All right. The next exhibit, please, Your Honor. And Agent Ford, are these toys that is below that mantle that we were just speaking about?
Yes, there was a pile kind of like below the mantle to the right and then kind of in that corner between this other chair and
Okay, so there's two piles of toys.
Yes.
One over by the door, and then this pile that was to the left of the mantle.
Yes.
All right. The next exhibit, please, Your Honor. All right. Now, Agent Fort, this is the living room as we've described it. Tell us about that. Or what's in front of the door?
It was like a hutch style cabinet that was sitting in front of the door.
And is that the front door to the residence?
That is, yes.
All right. And is there two pieces to that hutch?
Yes, there were.
And in that picture, are the two pieces kind of as the top off the bottom?
Yes.
And did your team do that, or was it that way when you walked in?
It was that way when we arrived at the
So
scene.
this is just as the scene was when you got there.
Yes, these are pictures indicating how it was when we were there.
All right. Move that as the next exhibit, please. And Agent Fort, were there numerous stains on the floor?
Yes.
All right. And on the carpet in the living room?
Yes.
And is that kind of what this picture is depicting, is some of those stains?
Yes.
All right. Make that the next exhibit, please, Your Honor. All right, and what are we seeing here, Agent Ford?
This is just a picture of a coffee table and chair and some of the carpet around that area.
All right, and then there was is there some staining on the floor, on the carpet around the coffee table?
There was, yeah.
And I believe in your report you note that there's a possible bleach stain in the front of the coffee table.
Yes.
Next exhibit, please, Your Honor. All right, Agent Ford, is this the entry, the double door entry to the master bedroom on the left?
Yes, it is.
All right, and is there to appear to be a lock on that door?
Yes, there was kind of a lockup at the top of it.
All right, and is that on the living room side of the door or the inside of the bedroom?
That was on the living room side of the door, so if you were walking into the bedroom itself, it would have been facing you when the doors were closed.
All right, we'd ask to make that the next exhibit, Your Honor. And Agent Ford, is this looking at the inside of that master bedroom and then back out into the living room from the master bedroom?
Yeah, so the first picture would be coming into the bedroom and looking off to the left side, like you were facing the back side of the house. And then the next picture would be standing inside that bedroom, facing out into the living room area.
Ask to make that the next exhibit. Okay, so obviously at this point, the team has been in the house, is that right?
Yes,
So we see these markers all over the living room. And is this the living room that we're seeing in this picture?
that is, yes.
And what are these markers representing?
These markers were actually part of some testing we had done. It was, we use a chemical test to kind of give us a luminescence glow, if you will, for what could possibly test as blood. It's more just to find staining and then test it further from there. So these markers were actually areas that tested positive for that blue star, which is that chemical we use.
Okay, so one of your jobs, as you stated, was to see if there was any blood on the scene. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
So how do you do that as the VCRT team or the VCRT? How would you do that?
So the first thing we do is we will visually examine the scene itself, just looking for anything that's got a reddish brown stain hue to it. And then that stain will be marked, and then it'll be tested with chemicals that would be either presumptive or not presumptive for blood. And then those would be sent to the lab for further testing for DNA and so forth. But the first thing would be to visually look for it and look for areas that kind of look odd. So sometimes blood isn't always a reddish brown stain. Sometimes it can be an off color, kind of like the previous picture with the wall, and it had that kind of orangish kind of hue to it. That's why we took a picture of it. But it also can just kind of mask itself essentially by not really looking that deep red that you would think. But these are actually done with that other chemical, and if you can't see something, sometimes we'll spray it with another chemical to help us visualize where a stain may be, and that's what that blue star does, is just help us visualize an area that might be possible for blood and give us a little more insight into where some of these stains might be. And these are just areas that would have tested positive with that blue star chemical.
So it sounds like you spray a large area down with Blue Star to kind of narrow down your focus. Is that a simplified way?
That's correct. We have like a spray bottle that'll spray this. It's a liquid, and it's kind of like I guess your spray would be more like a spray bottle for water if you were spraying your plants or your hair or something like that. So it lets off a pretty big mist, but it'll concentrate areas and give you a smaller area to look at, and then that'll be circled and then just marked with the numbers so that we can go back and test it further.
So these were the areas that the Blue Star indicated that you wanted to check further.
That is correct.
All right. Asked to make that the next exhibit, Your Honor. All right. Is this just a closer up photograph of some of those markers from the living room?
Yes.
All right. Indicating areas that you wanted to check
That's
further. Asked to make that the next exhibit.
191.
All right. Where are we looking now, Agent Ford?
This would be looking out from the living room area into the kitchen area and dining room area.
All right. And where are the other bedrooms from how we're looking?
They're off to the right side of that, where that wall kind of protrudes out a little bit. That's an entryway into the hallway area where the other bedrooms are.
So if you're wanting to walk from the living room to the back bedrooms, you would walk through this dining room into the kitchen and take a right.
Yes, roughly about where that carpet ends is about where that area was. So,
The next exhibit, please, Your Honor. So at this point, Agent Ford, is this picture taken from standing in that doorway of the kitchen
yes,
to the back part of the house or the bedrooms?
the one on the left is, yes.
Okay, and what are we seeing here on the left?
It's just markers and staining that we had visualized, so we were able to actually see it. And we just different areas of the carpet we wanted to test further, and just a picture of the wall and the floor that was right there.
Is that black stuff on the floor? What is that?
That was a tape to hold the carpet down.
Oh, and did the team put it there, or was that already there?
That was like that when we got there.
Okay. And then there's some wallpaper and such ripped off the wall, it appears. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And was that like that when the team got there?
That was also like that when we got there.
All right. And then on the right, are we looking down the hallway?
That would be stepping into the hallway from right to the left is where the other picture was taken, so it'd be stepping into the hallway and looking down.
And is that the laundry room that would be on the immediate right from this, where this second picture is?
Yes.
All right. Has to make that the next exhibit.
193.
All right. And what is this, Agent Ford?
That area that had the tape covering the carpet, that was kind of sunken down in that other picture. This is just a picture of this being pulled back to look underneath the carpet.
And is that staining that's on the carpet and under the carpet?
Yes.
And was this area was all tested?
Yes.
And did any of it indicate something needed further testing?
No, it was all negative.
All right. Has to make that the next exhibit.
194.
Okay, so on the left, is this the hallway?
Yes.
And is that just a little further down than the previous pictures we were looking at?
Yes.
All right, is that a hole in the kind of the wall next to the floor that we're seeing?
On the left picture?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, and then the right picture, what are we looking at there?
That's a picture of the wall just on where that doorway entry is. It would have been to the left of it on the left side picture and up the side of the wall.
Okay.
So it was just on the other side of that doorway.
And is that a Post-it note on the wall?
Yes.
What is that representing?
That's actually representing a marker. Sometimes we don't, on something like this with a wall or something that's a little higher up and there's nowhere really to set the marker or hang the marker, we'll use a Post-it note in lieu of using the little big plastic heavy markers that we normally use.
So is there a stain or an area of interest on that?
You need to move away so that the jurors can see the screen. I've had some indicators.
Yes, sir.
You could come stand maybe over in this direction and talk with him or wherever you want to. But problem is if you want to stand at the council table, that's fine. But I appreciate the jury letting me know they can't see. We have a great courtroom. One of the disadvantages is the podium is large enough and someone standing there makes it difficult for the jurors to all see. Thank you.
All right, so Agent Ford, is that Post-it note there, you said that was representing a marker?
Correct.
And is there a stain or an area of interest on the wall?
Yes, there was just a little bit of staining there on the wall.
Okay. Has to make that the next exhibit, Your Honor.
195.
All right, Agent Ford, so we are now obviously outside the house. Is this to the back of the house?
Yes, this would have been in the backyard of the house, yes.
And this shed here, was it locked with that rock in front of the door when the team got there?
Yes.
And the picture on the right, is that the inside of that shed?
Yes.
Has to make that the next exhibit, Your Honor.
196.
And Agent Ford, were there two sheds in the backyard?
That's correct.
And is this a picture of the shed on the left as we're looking at it?
Yes.
Was it also locked when the team got there?
Yes.
And is that the inside of it on the right?
Yes.
The next exhibit, please, Your Honor.
197.
Agent Ford, what kind of vehicle were on scene when the team got there?
There was a tractor trailer truck and an Impala and an F-150 that were on the scene.
And the Impala, is that the silver vehicle that we're seeing there?
Yes, the other vehicle was a VCRT vehicle.
Okay. So there was not a red car there when the team got there?
There was not, no.
So this is the silver Impala and the trunk of it?
That is correct.
Has to make that the next exhibit, Your Honor.
198.
And is this the F-150 that you spoke of, Agent Ford?
Yes,
And was it inspected also?
it was, yes.
The next exhibit, please, Ron. I believe that's the last photograph. So, Agent Ford, after you go to a scene, do you document your findings?
We do, yes.
And did you do that in this case?
Yes.
And if any team member or lab person tests anything, would they also document their findings in a report?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to hand you a document. What is that I've handed you, Agent Ford?
It appears to be a copy of the official crime scene report.
And it is 3 pages long?
Yes.
Just looking at the first page, and as you said, you were the team leader on this, is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you list all the members of the team and their specialties on the first page?
Yes.
Okay. And then what is below that? It says evidence collected on scene.
Those are actually items that we collected from the scene and took back with us to the lab and submitted to the lab for further testing.
Okay, and then testing can be requested on those items, or y'all can do testing if it's something that you think needs to be done. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, and then going to the second page. So here we start talking about the chemical spray Blue Star that you were speaking of earlier. Is that right?
That's correct.
So you note the front bedroom, living room, and hallway. Were all those areas tested with Blue Star?
Correct.
And the front bedroom, what was the test results on that?
The front bedroom was tested negative.
Right, and the living room and hallway, what were the results on that?
Those tested positive with the Blue Star.
Okay. And let's go through again. What does that indicate to you?
Just that they need to be tested further for actually do chemical.
Okay. And what does that do?
That'll actually give us a color change when it's tested with the chemicals that are added.
So all the areas of interest that we talked about earlier, the markers and it appears some other areas, were tested with the TMB and P?
Yes.
Okay. And is that the list of items that we're seeing there?
Yes.
Looks like a list of 1 through 38.
That's correct.
And did any of those indicate the presence of blood?
They did not know.
Now, I want to draw your attention specifically to number 7. It says possible bleach stain in front of coffee table in living room. Do you see that?
Yes.
And were there other stains on the living room carpet as well?
There were, yes.
How would Blue Star interact with bleach?
It can give us a positive result with the Blue Star, just to give us further indication that it may need to be tested.
And what if there was bleach poured on the area and then it was cleaned or scrubbed with water and or soap, something of that nature?
It's possible that it diluted things out and made it where it didn't react with either testing.
Okay, and does bleach, would it react with the TMB and P test?
The bleach itself should not, but if it had blood in it, it should react.
Okay, so if this is a bleach stain covering blood, what would the bleach do to the blood?
The bleach, depending on how long it's there and how well it's put on or how concentrated this is, it may degrade the blood and possibly just completely get rid of anything that would be testable and give us a positive testing.
So is there any way to tell exactly how long that stain had been there or the amount of time it would take to where blood wouldn't react?
No, there's not.
And was there carpet that was cut up and looked under in the living room?
Yes, we cut the majority of the carpet up and pulled it away to look underneath the carpet itself.
And what were you looking for when doing that?
We were looking more specifically for some staining that may have been seeped through the carpet and not shown on the top of the carpet. So we were really kind of looking for concentrated areas of staining underneath that carpet also.
And did you see any staining of that nature?
We did not know.
And if there was a small amount of blood, say from drops from a nosebleed or a cut, could the area you said of possible bleach easily have covered that up?
Yes, it probably would not have seeped through the carpet.
You're going to estimate that his report, the next exhibit.
Be 200.
Mr. Etheridge, could you bring back up the first slide, please, the overview of the house? So Agent Ford, this is the layout of the house. We've talked about a front door that faces the road, the back door that your team made entry into. Was there also another door to the residence?
There was, yes.
And where was that door?
That was actually in the laundry room. You can see on the back side of the house that door swinging out.
So is that right here?
Yes,
And did you and your team go in and out that door?
we did, yes.
Tell us about opening that door. Was it easy to open? Did you have difficulty opening it?
It wasn't easy to open it. It kind of stuck when you went to open it up.
So the first time you went to open the door, it was stuck and harder to open?
Yes.
All right. Is that the door that y'all went in and out mostly?
It depended on what kind of testing was going on in the living room. So we did go in and out of it pretty regularly, just as much as we would of the back door also.
When you first opened it, you said that door was harder to open. It was kind of stuck.
Yes.
That's my questions, Your Honor. We're waiting on a question.
Mr. Mitchell, you may cross-examine the witness.
Agent Fort, the images that were just shown, just want to be clear, those markers in the living room are from the initial spray down of the Blue Star, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And that just gives you an indication of where you should be testing.
Yes.
And when you get a reaction from the Blue Star, your team follows up and tests it with a different chemical.
That is correct. It's a little more specific, so that's why it gets tested further.
So any area that may have come back on Blue Star, y'all tested.
That is correct, yes.
And the area number 7 that General Turnbow pointed out, this bleach stain, would the secondary, the chemical testing you do, would you expect to find blood if there was blood there?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, please step across the hallway, please. Give you an opportunity to stretch your legs. Before you finish, and I'll give both sides an opportunity, but question that I was handed by one of the jurors is, does Blue Star chemical also indicate or mark urine or other types of spills such as juice? And that would be the question that I think is a legitimate question from the jury, and I'll either allow one of you to ask or I'll ask it myself. All right. Then when the jury comes back, I'll go ahead and ask that question and then allow you to finish up your cross-examination. Is that sufficient?
I guess so.
All right.
Then while the jury's out, I'd like to ask, first to see if he knows if he's ever tested used urine in those places.
So you want to know the answer to the question before we ask it in front of the jury? Is that
I want to know if there's a foundation for him to be able to testify whether it will give false positives or not.
all right. Well, then I'll ask the question. Does Blue Star chemical also indicate or mark urine or other types of spills such as juice?
It does, yes.
And were any of those marked according to what you found on this scene?
Yes.
And did any of those test for those things?
We don't test specifically for urine and juice, but they do. Anything that does test positive for Blue Star, we do test further for blood.
Right. So if there was a urine stain, and I'm not going to ask this in front of the jury, but I'll allow the lawyers to, but if there was a urine stain on a carpet, for example, it would have marked it with Blue Star, but then you would have had to follow up with testing, is that correct?
That is correct.
And to your knowledge, was any testing done to determine any of that?
As far as to determine if it was urine or not?
Yes.
No.
All right. Then we will allow those, I'll allow that question, the one question of the jury, to be asked when they return.
You can ask that question, Joe?
I'll ask that question.
And then we'll get follow-up.
Yes, sir. Bring the jury in. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated. All right, in your absence, I considered one of the questions that I was handed by the jurors, and I'm going to go ahead and, by agreement of the parties, I'll be the one to ask it of the witness. Does Blue Star Chemical also indicate or mark urine and other types of spills such as juice?
It's possible that it will react with those things.
All right. Mr. Mitchell,
Not follow up on that.
you may.
When it comes back positive like that, do y'all test for anything other than blood?
With reaction to Blue Star or
Correct.
just in general?
If there's a reaction to Blue Star, are you testing it for anything other than blood?
No,
Are you testing it for bleach?
we are not, no.
When number 7 says it's a possibly bleached area, do you know if it was bleached?
I believe it's stated as a bleach stained area, and all that is an indication that there was a dark spot in the carpet and it was whited out, so the pigments in the fabric would have just been a lighter color.
But even if there was blood there and then bleach was put on it, you would still anticipate to see the blood.
If it did not degrade it to the point that we couldn't test it, yes.
But it's still possible with your chemical testing to see it.
Yes.
Turbo?
Agent Fort, with these areas tested positive with Blue Star, was there a way on scene to test for urine?
There was not, no.
And does the TBI do that?
The TBI does not, no.
Okay. And then, as you said, with the bleach in the blood, bleach could possibly or could not possibly degrade blood to the point where it wouldn't interact with your other test?
That's correct.
Okay. That's all, Your Honor.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You may step down. Go to your next witness.
Judge, I'm happy to report that we're running early this morning and have finished ahead of schedule. We,
Next witness is when is
1 o'clock, and we have a series of witnesses that are arriving at 1 o'clock.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as you may have gathered, there are a number of these witnesses that are coming from other locations. Sometimes they're coming from other courts that they've had to be in. So we try to time it to where instead of having a room full of people sitting there cooling their heels for 2 or 3 days, we try to let them be staggered in. So right now, we've moved so quickly this morning that we have finished all of the witnesses that we had this morning. So you're going to have a little bit of a longer lunch hour. We'll be in recess for lunch until 1 o'clock. All right, thank you. Let me just, before we adjourn or recess for lunch completely, let's just make sure after the jury's out, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. All right, you said you had a series of witnesses for this afternoon?
Yes, sir.
All right, and we still looking at, just for general principles, are we still looking at you finishing your proof tomorrow, or do you know?
I think we will, Judge. I mean, I can't anticipate cross-examination length. We have 6 witnesses this afternoon.
6 left?
This
Okay.
afternoon. We have witnesses, as I reported, coming in from out of town that will arrive in Nashville at 9 a.m., but we have 2 witnesses that will be here at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning to testify. Those 2 witnesses, the out-of-town witnesses,
That's fine.
we
But
close at the end.
it is reasonable to think that there's a possibility the state could conclude its proof tomorrow?
Possible.
All right. I'm not going to hold you to it. I'm just trying to get an
No, I
idea.
understand. I think
And-
if we don't finish tomorrow afternoon, then we will definitely finish on Friday.
All right. So
Again, assuming,
following that, if the defense wishes to call any, put on any proof, then we'll let you do, start your proof as soon as the state finishes theirs after any motions are heard. So, all right, then we'll stand in recess for lunch until 1 o'clock. Well, Ms. Lewis was just pointing out that we have to have a rough time frame for finishing the trial so that the jurors could be transported back to their home in Hamilton County once we're finished. It's a little hard to expect. We don't know how long they're going to deliberate, for one thing.
and Judge, I think between Mr. Lockhart and I, we gave him a rough expectation in court hour, 2 to 3 weeks.
Yep.
That's as rough as it gets.
So they may be hanging out in beautiful Dixon County waiting for the bus to arrive if we're not able to get it more definite. So we'll deal with that.
Recording stopped.
All right, thank you, and we will now take our lunch recess.
All rise. This court is in recess until 1 o'clock.
I'll say about that.